Hi, I'm Hope. I'm a former journalist and now run my own PR company. Throughout my career, I've spoken to and written about some really interesting people. The problem with newspapers, magazines, and even radio is that you only have a certain amount of words to tell someone's story, and that's often not enough. I've started this podcast to delve deeper into the people behind the headlines and to allow them to really tell their stories. Join me as I interview inspirational people with really interesting stories to tell. It's an article for your ears. Hello and welcome back to the Hot Off the Press podcast, the podcast that delves deeper into the people behind the headlines and gives you an article for your ears. Today I'm joined by Nicole Geddes, she's got an incredible career history, but she's most recently helping performers pivot during the pandemic. So we're going to have a little bit of a chat with her today. Hello, Nicole.
Hello, that was a fab tagline and intro, Hope. I love that.
Good. So talk us through your career, how it started, because you've done some impressive sort of jobs and stuff over the years, haven't you?
Yeah, the more I talk about my story, the more people are telling me that it's super duper impressive and, you know, buying into me and all of my performing credits and history. But to be quite honest, it was just life. It was just what I did. It was what I set out to do. And it just all sort of happened. So at the time when I was living it, it wasn't necessarily as big or as exciting as it now seems looking back. But, you know, obviously it was just performing. It was what I wanted to do, and it's what I was lucky enough to do. And I think I took a lot of it for granted. And now looking back, and especially now through the pandemic where performers aren't able to perform, I do feel very grateful that that part of my life and that part of my career was so successful.
So tell us about your most successful moment then, like the moment where you thought, oh, okay, I'm really doing quite well here.
Anybody that is listening that is a performer, they'll know that it's an absolute roller coaster of a business to be in. So 1 minute you're riding a high and the next minute you're actually back out of work. It's not a constant stream of success, or it certainly wasn't for me. So every time I reached a high, there was the next month or the next week, and it was slightly different again. And so you're fixating all of the time on the next possible opportunity, the next gig, the next contract, the next time money starts coming into your account. So I don't think, like I just said, I don't think you completely appreciate the moments that you're living in as you're living in them. But looking back, when I drop that I've danced behind Kylie Minogue, that always gets a good wow reaction from people. But again, it was very fleeting. It was just one thing and then on to the next thing. Again, I worked and assisted choreographers in New York, and that always sounds super impressive, but it was hard work. So again, at the time, it was 4 months, and it was hard going, and it was hot, and it was, you know, exhausting. And now when you look back, you think, gosh, that was really amazing. Traveling around the country in the circus at the time, again, just didn't feel like it was going to be a pinnacle part of my career, but it really was. So I think the point is, I hope that most things, now that I'm reflecting, that I've done have created opportunities and stories and built the foundations to me and who I am in my business now. But yeah, there's been some great times, but there has been some famine. So it's feast and famine. It was for me as a performer, as many people experience and certainly are right now as well.
So you're not a performer now. When was the first time you sort of came out of that and changed your sort of career path just slightly?
Some people would say that I cut that slightly early because I was, it was about 15, I'm going to say 15, it's 16 years ago now, because I'm not counting the past year as a year. So 15 years ago, I set up Manic Stage Productions with my business partner. I was still performing at that point, but I knew that I had other endeavors and other things that I wanted to do. And so I started to think about cutting my performance career short. and start to put into place the foundations and the structure for building a business, and that was Manic Stage Productions. So yeah, and it just really stemmed from knowing that I wanted to be the producer, I wanted to be the leader, I wanted to be the person in charge, and I'd had a fantastic career, but it was, as I say, up and down, and I wanted something more stable, and I wanted something more that I had produced and created and was able to lead myself. So that's when 16 years ago, and then probably about 10 years ago, completely gave up performing and gave everything to Manic Stage Productions. But that's more because it needed me to at that point. It had built so rapidly over 5 years.
So talk to me about Manic Stage Productions. What does it do? What do you offer? Because if anyone follows you on Instagram, they'll see how impressive all of the performers are that you sort of manage. So tell us more about that.
Thank you. No, it's an absolute passion of mine. It stems from being in the business. So I've got all of the knowledge and the skills, but I'm just a lot older now, and I want to be the producer. I want to be behind the scenes, and making those connections and the collaborations with my clients. But yes, so Manic Stage Productions is a pop-up entertainment producer for land and sea. Obviously, over the past year, it's been very, very stuck and still because of the pandemic, but we are all seeing the light at the end of the tunnel now in all of our different endeavors, and it's getting quite exciting to build the business back up. But Manic Stage Productions is exactly that. It's a pop-up entertainment provider for events, corporate events, private parties, anything that just needs the wow factor. And like you say, if you head over to our Instagram, you'll see that we range from showgirls to aerialists to fire performers to hedgemen to acrobats to contortionists, you name it. And it's followed on very much from my time in the circus, things that I've learned and I've been surrounded by and around all those years ago, are very much the making of my business now.
And you mentioned there about the last year not really counting as a year, which I think we can all kind of agree with, that we just like to cross it off and start again. How has coronavirus, the pandemic and lockdown affected not only you, but the industry as a whole?
So yeah, it's been absolutely heartbreaking. And at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was absolutely grieving for the industry, grieving for the year that I felt my business should have had, was having, didn't have, but was contracted to have, and all of the rest of it. But actually, I soon learned that you've got to keep pushing forward. You can't stay still. It was an opportunity to create other businesses, to have a look at other avenues, to create collaborations. And although it's been absolutely tragic for the industry on a whole, and for many performers and people within it, and not just performers, we've got everybody on all areas of the events industry that have suffered, a lot of people have come through it with new collaborations, new enthusiasms, new connections. And so I like to focus on the positives rather than the negative, because I do think as an industry professional and somebody that's in and amongst it, I have seen a change in how people are working, and I think it's going to be really beneficial for the industry on a whole when we come back. And performers by nature are very competitive. That's what we've been taught to be, but already we're seeing collaborations and connections and not as much competition. And I hope that will stay, because I think it's going to create a really firm and brand new way of being in business when it comes to entertainment and performing and events. So I'm excited by it. It has been devastating, but so many people have pivoted and found new ways. And I think the industry on a whole will come back really energized and enthusiastic, and we're going to be able to serve on a level that we've never served before. That's my feelings about it.
I imagine everyone's going to be absolutely raring to go onto that stage when everything comes back as well. So they'll just have so much more energy and enthusiasm.
Yeah, and my team, Manic Stage Productions, the actual core team, have been rehearsing every week online. The commitment that they've shown to myself, each other, and their own careers has been absolutely outstanding. Every Tuesday evening, we're online, taking class, rehearsing, keeping that team together, and they're a credit to themselves, really. And I think that people will have gone one of two ways. With their careers, they'll have pivoted and they'll have found new ways, or they'll have really dug deep. And if you've dug deep and continued on your path, with whatever it is you're doing through the pandemic. I think you're going to come back really strong.
So obviously, you say a lot of people have had to find new opportunities, new collaborations, and this is something that you've done yourself, isn't it? So what was your sort of second pivot in your career?
Yeah, so just learning and remembering what I did back at the beginning, you know, from a performer to an entrepreneur, performer to producer. I dug deep, as I know that many people did, and had a real good conversation internally with myself, because I think a lot of people have been on a very big personal development experience this year. We've had that time to reflect and to think, and very, very early on I knew that I couldn't sit and wait for the business and the entertainment industry to come back to life. And you know, it was very obvious for the people that were really in that industry that it wasn't going to come back as soon as maybe the rest of the world. And that's been proved right. So really early on, I had a little word with myself. And you know, people say, what would you tell your younger self? Well, I've always found that I ask my younger self to tell me, because over the years, when I've got more responsibilities, I've got a family, I've got a mortgage, I've got a son, I've found it a little bit harder to take the leap, to face my fear. But this time I sort of said, come on, 18-year-old Nicole, what would you have done? And I looked and I thought, and I know what I would have done. And so this time I did it myself again. So the second pivot comes because of the pandemic, and just really created a safe space for performers to come and learn about being entrepreneurial, trying to find new ways to expand their identity so that they could do what I was doing and what I had done before, which is be multi-passionate, find new ways, use your enthusiasm and energy to create income streams and things like that. So it's called Performerpreneur because I absolutely just love that term that I've created. I've had it trademarked because, and anyone that I speak to that is a performer that now wants to be more business minded just loves that it's, what are you? I'm a performerpreneur. Because for so long performers have been put into one box, and you can only do this and you're only a performer, and that's fine, and that's society, and we've all believed it and we've all lived it. But right now the pandemic has given us those wings to try and fly, and so we're performerpreneurs. We're performers who are, you know, transitioning and treating themselves as business people and entrepreneurs. And so Performerpreneur was created. It's a support network with a membership and a group program, and people have really bought into it, and I'm just there wanting to support, help, mentor, coach, give advice to, and not just me, because I do not know everything. Let's just put that out there. But I do have a great network of business people that I just bring in to help, to guide us, to give advice, to offer their expertise. And I think, again, that's the key, isn't it? Collaboration, communication, and just knowing that being part of a team, be that a business team or a performance team, is actually a really safe and special place to be. I call it my empowerment pod, and the people that come into the club as opposed to the hub are just in that smaller empowerment pod, and we're just really there rooting for each other.
So have you had many sort of entrepreneurs really take off since starting the group? Have you had any sort of success stories that you can tell us about?
Yeah, we've had loads of wonderful success stories, and my inbox is full daily with people thanking me. And it's not me. I always reply and say, it's not me, it's you. I've just sort of, you know, given you the push or the accountability and the support. It's absolutely all you. People have gone off in really amazing directions, you know, because considering primarily we are performers and entertainers and event industry professionals, the people that are in my membership that have really flown, they've gone in different directions. We've got a letterbox suite company that sold over 8,000 products through the pandemic. And not even starting right at the beginning. Some people didn't know what they wanted to do at the very beginning. If we're talking March, these things happen sort of May, June, July. And once they built the foundations and the confidence, because that's the hard bit, isn't it? That belief. So 8,000 products, that popped into my inbox the other day. And I think that's incredible. People have pivoted and gone online. And I know that everybody expected that to be an easy transition, but it just wasn't. You know, we had to find new skills. We had to do extra learning, buy and invest and believe, and people have done fantastically with online lessons, online workshops, bingo, all of that, and just finding that way of just keeping themselves busy and not necessarily realizing that it was going to become as big as it was. We've got online dance festivals have been curated, podcasts, blogs, websites. It really has been inspirational to watch. And I think the fact that so many of us maybe sat at the beginning of March 2020 and was uber scared of what the future would look like, we're now a year on celebrating our successes, and I just think that's amazing. It's an amazing place to be. And they're side hustles, and they will get back to performing, absolutely, and so they should. But some people might not. They might have found their new way, and that's cool. It's exciting to be part of that journey, but it's absolutely not me. I've just created a safe space for people to dare to believe.
I love that, dare to believe. I think that's really nice. So if there was a performer listening to this now who hasn't pivoted and is still unsure of what they're going to do, obviously things are starting to open back up, but who really knows when things will come back normally? What would your advice be to them? What would you suggest that they do today?
I think you're exactly right, Hope. I think so many of us are excited for what the next few months look like. The roadmap's in place, and we have that to look forward to. But if the past year has taught us anything, it's that we cannot rely on anything, and we have to be sustainable. We have to be sustainable ourselves. We have to build those things for ourselves, just so that we have the security. I mean, God forbid, we hope a worldwide pandemic won't strike again, but we should take our lessons learned from it, that you can be multi-passionate, you can have a side hustle and be a performer. And I don't believe you're too late to do that. I think, at any stage in the game, 15 years ago for me, when I was performing and I started to create Manic Stage Productions, and then fast forward to now, where I've still got Manic Stage Productions and I've created Performerpreneur, the story just goes to show that it's really not because of the pandemic that people should be doing these things. It's because they might be feeling internally they've got something more to give. They want to experiment and try and expand, and I think it's a scary place to be. So my advice would be, just do it, have a go. You're not turning your back on anything. You're not saying that you are now not a performer or you're now not something else. You are just expressing your individuality. You're using your USPs, you're acknowledging that you have other superpowers. And I say often, it's about expanding your identity and being multi-passionate. There are a couple of the phrases I use because I genuinely believe that you don't have to sit in one box. You can move in any direction. And society has told us that we have to, at 16, make a decision with your GCSEs. And so we are programmed to believe that that's the only way, but I really don't think it is. And like I say, using the last year as experience, if you haven't set off on that journey of exploring what else you might want to do, or what else you're good at, or what else can run alongside and become a side hustle or a main business or a project, then I don't think there's ever a right or wrong time. Just face your fears, have a go, and find support, seek support. So if you are a performer and you are listening, Performerpreneur, the Side Hustle Hub, is a free Facebook space. It's got over 900 members in there, and we're all supporting and collaborating and listening and answering questions and being there for each other to inspire. So please come and join us over there. And then I've got my serious side hustlers that have joined the membership. And when people are ready for that, I just get a little inbox saying, I think now's my time, that I want to grow this and see what it can do.
Fab. So we know where we can find you now.
Yeah, I love the fact, come and drop in.
I love as well that entrepreneurs tend to go down different routes depending on what they feel they're passionate about or they feel like they could succeed in. And that's exactly what you're doing with your performerpreneurs, and just encouraging them to go down as many different routes as they feel they can or they feel they want to, and not be tied down to one career, although that is their main passion, which I think is really, really good point.
Thank you. We're definitely finding, and I'm on a journey too, Hope, and the things that I thought I knew have been developed. I'm learning new things all the time, and I think anybody that's got spontaneity, enthusiasm, belief. You are entrepreneurs, you know, if you're going to jump out of that box and push for something different and something new, you should 100% give yourself that title. Imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs are big topics, and they're very, very real. But you can work through them, and you shouldn't let anything internal talk or anything like that stop you from achieving, because I know that more people than dare to have got the ability to create their own destiny.
So just going off that imposter syndrome then, because I know I've definitely suffered with that. I mean, starting a business in a pandemic and being faced up against these big companies that are doing so well, you do get imposter syndrome. What would you say to someone who feels like they are an imposter?
I would say you're not alone. You've just admitted that you feel it. I feel it too. I don't think I know anybody that doesn't feel imposter syndrome at some point in their career, week, day. You know, it's a very real thing. And I often say to my clients that actually use it as a force for good, because it's not going to go away. It will just change and move with what you're doing, and you might be able to dull it down in one area, but it'll resurface in another. So I say, when it comes to imposter syndrome, don't think you can get rid of it, just learn to work with it. And I use a term called use it as a force for good, because hope, when you are feeling that imposter syndrome in that moment or that area, you can do two things. You can stand completely still, or you can push through and move forward. And if you use it as a force for good, you will make sure that you've read that extra book. You'll make sure that you've listened to another podcast. You'll make sure you've asked for some advice. And so that imposter syndrome is fueling you to be better. And that is using it as a force for good. Some people, and too many people, will feel it and freeze and retreat. And that's okay, but it's not what it's there for. If you're suffering from imposter syndrome, then please believe that and realize that everybody is, and the people that excel are the people that are using it as a force for good to really drive them forward, to make sure that they don't feel like an imposter anymore. It will come in the next phase, absolutely, but it keeps you moving forward. So hopefully that's some good advice.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like the fight or flight kind of thing, and you've got to fight.
Yes.
That's how you move forward.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. That was really interesting. And we know where we can find your Facebook groups. Where else can we find you online?
So I'm over on LinkedIn, Nicole Louise Geddes. So come and find me personally over there. And that's a mixture of myself, my stories, and both my businesses. And then both businesses have an Instagram. So we've got Manic SP_entertainment for Manic, and Performerpreneur for Performerpreneur, and a couple of websites floating around as well: Manic Stage Productions, Performerpreneur, and Nicole Louise Geddes. But I think mainly, if you want to see into my businesses, Instagram and LinkedIn are really where you get the essence of who I am and what I can do.
Fab. Thank you so much. It was lovely chatting to you today.
You too. Thank you so much. Good luck to everybody listening.
If you liked what you heard today, make sure you subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to hear more inspirational stories.